Chapter 17 of The House on the Downs by Gladys Edson Locke. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chiefly Parry. The party from the Grange had luncheon at the Rotherdene Arms, a quaint, rambling old hostelry in the High Street. Through the open windows of the coffee-room stole the faint, sweet scent of the new-mown hay, lying in the meadows beyond the ancient houses of the village. There was little traffic in the High Street, little passage of people to and fro on the grass-grown paths that served as sidewalks. Here a countryman lazily drove a cow, equally lazy. There a farmer in his open cart sat idly chatting with an apple-cheeked lass who had come out of her thatched cottage to talk to him. Over everything lay the sunny quiet of midsummer noon, and thoughts of the inquest seemed almost a desecration. From the century-old table at which Mark sat with Sir Quentin, Eve, Mr. Elphick, and Pheasanta Lee, he looked across the roomy, low-ceilinged apartment to where Irene Grayle was sitting with members of her company. They were a subdued little group, and none more so than the actress-manageress, who was making a pretense at eating. At a small table in a distant corner, Alwyn Rotherdene had chosen to lunch alone. As at the inquest, his somber, brooding gaze rarely left Eve's face. Lord Mostyn, lunching in company with an ultra-elegant and somewhat vacuous-looking gentleman of uncertain age, also found Eve a magnet that steadily drew his boldly admiring eyes. Sir Quentin's expression was not such as to encourage him to approach her as he had done in the courtroom. But Eve was not deterred from flashing him an enchanting smile now and then. She had by this time, to all outward appearance, regained her usual composure and sang-froid. At a table just beyond Lord Mostyn's was a man whom Mark had observed at the inquest, sitting in the section reserved for witnesses. Probably he would be among those called to testify in the afternoon. He was a thin, elderly person with a colorless, smooth-shaven face, dreamy and weak blue eyes, a weaker mouth, and a receding chin. He was dressed in a neat but worn tweed suit, and had about him something of the air of an unsuccessful, down-at-heels actor. He, too, was staring at Eve, reflectively and furtively. She was either unconscious of his scrutiny, or did not consider that a man of his type merited more than a casual glance. Conversation at Sir Quentin's table was desultory and strained. By tacit agreement, the inquest and its progress was not referred to. "I can't think why Rodney hasn't at least let us hear from him," remarked Sir Quentin, breaking a long pause. "His going off like this without a word is deuced awkward. Inspector Haskett is beginning to get a bit nasty about it." "He would," said Eve with an indifferent shrug. "Haskett is an insufferable boor." Mr. Elphick touched his napkin to his lips. "It was not nice of Rodney to run off, not nice at all," he observed with prim severity. "Oh, it was the gypsy in him," pronounced Eve, a hint of insolence in her voice. "I don't suppose a gypsy can ever become thoroughly civilized." She looked directly at Pheasanta Lee as she spoke. The Romany's tawny skin flushed, her eyes held a sudden fire, gone, however, in a moment. It was obvious she was putting restraint upon herself. "Sometimes civilization bears very hard upon a gypsy," she remarked in her full, rich voice. "Pheasanta," interposed Sir Quentin quickly, a little pained frown between his eyes. "You must excuse Eve. She is not quite herself today. I am sure she was not intentionally rude." "It does not matter," Pheasanta answered quietly. "Lady Eve is right. A gypsy cannot become entirely civilized." Eve drew a cigarette from her case and turned with a charming smile to Mark. "Will you give me a light, Mr. Brandon?" Sir Quentin consulted his watch. "I don't like to hurry you, Eve, but I think we should be getting back to the schoolhouse." Eve made a little moo and blew out a tiny ring of cigarette smoke. "What a priceless old mentor you are, Quentin. Well, I suppose we shall have to go. You see what a tyrant he is, Mr. Brandon?" Mark, as he watched Eve with her air of indolent grace strolling along the High Street to the coroner's court with Sir Quentin and Mr. Elphick, marveled that she could show herself so cool and indifferent after the ordeal she had been put through that morning. Moreover, how could she fail to dread what might very likely lie before her in the afternoon's proceedings? Was it possible she did not, after all, realize how damaging had been the testimony already brought forward against her? Or was she a consummate actress, successfully hiding her emotions? Lee, on the contrary, with whom Mark was walking, was obviously the prey of disturbing emotions. She made no attempt at conversation and did not encourage Mark's efforts. Tragedy brooded in her eyes, and she was too nearly a child of the primitive to be able to conceal the fact. Civilization had touched, but not transformed her. The first witness of the afternoon's proceedings was the itinerant gypsy tinker, Sylvester Shaw, whom Mark had seen in Rotherdene Hollow with Lee on the night he had trailed her over the downs. Tinner Shaw proved an evasive and unsatisfactory witness from the coroner's point of view. According to the gypsy's story, he was in the habit of camping in the hollow whenever he happened to travel to that section of the downs. On the night immediately following the murder, which he declared he had not then known of, he had driven his pony into the hollow and prepared to camp there for a week or two. "And quite natural, like, governor, and all in the line of business," Shaw volunteered. "As you know, being a man of these parts, I goes in the daytime round to the nearby villages and farms, sellin' and mendin' pots and pans and such like." The coroner put on his spectacles and scrutinized a note which Detective Inspector Burton had just placed on his desk. "You had a late visitor in Rotherdene Hollow on the night of Thursday last, Tinner Shaw," the coroner asserted as he laid down the paper. "Who was this visitor?" The tinker reflectively fingered his battered slouch hat, which he held in one hand. "Right, governor," he agreed. "There were a detective come, a bullyin' sort of chap, who took ter threatenin' me for because I were huntin' for my own rabbit knife I'd lost." "What other visitor did you have?" snapped the coroner. The Romany's shrewd black eyes twinkled. "Had plenty of weasels and stoats and beetles, governor, and such like visitors." The coroner rapped sharply for order as a ripple of laughter ran about the court. "A woman came to see you, did she not?" The tinker removed a scrap of furs from the inside of his gaudy neckerchief. "In a manner o' speaking," he admitted cautiously, "I'd call her a lady, governor." Again the coroner was obliged to rap for order. "Who was this woman?" he demanded, ignoring Tinner Shaw's admonition. The tinker evaded a direct answer. "She came for naught of harm," he asserted. "She is of gypsy blood, governor, and it sends her a roaming at times, seeking the free, open air, whether it be night or day. When the mood's on us, governor, us gypsies has got to roam. In a manner o' speaking, 'tis in the blood, and 'tis stronger than us. We ain't to be blamed for it." "All this is beside the point," rebuked the coroner. "Who was your woman visitor?" Tinner Shaw played with the brass rings in his ears and pondered a moment. "Well, governor," he observed artfully, "seein's you know the lady's name as well as I do, and she didn't come for naught of harm, as I've said, but only ter satisfy the Romany spirit in her, there ain't no use of my holding back her name. 'Twere Miss Lee." The interest of the spectators grew. There was a little pucker on Sir Quentin's forehead. Otherwise, his features were inscrutable. The coroner consulted again Detective Inspector Burton's note. "What did Miss Lee ask you to help her find in the hollow?" The gypsy's swarthy, seamed and wrinkled face expressed amazement. "You've got it all wrong, governor. Miss Fazenda was helping me to find my rabbit knife, what I'd dropped under some of them bushes." "Indeed," observed the coroner dryly. "Did Miss Lee tell you how she happened to come to the hollow that night? She knew, even if you did not, that a murder had been committed there only a few hours before." "She never said nothing of any murder to me, governor. She had a roaming spell on her, and she saw the light of my campfire from the downs above, and so she came to chat with me. Her and me are old friends. I belonged to the encampment she were born into, and I've known her ever since she were a baby." No amount of questioning could shake the tinker's story, and finally the coroner gave up the attempt and summoned Lee. The Romany, her dark eyes full of slumberous fires and undefined passions, took her seat in the witness's chair and sat leaning a little forward. The coroner got through the preliminary questions as quickly as possible and on to the point of issue. Fazenda admitted, as a matter of fact she might almost be said to have volunteered the information, that Craddock Rayner had come to Rotherdene Hollow to meet and advise her regarding a stage career. She stated, as she had at the preliminary inquest, that she had written to him in regard to the matter. She now stated in addition that she had written on Lady Eve's stationery, as she fancied the crest might impress him. The crux of Fazenda's testimony was then that she had arranged to meet Rayner in the hollow at 4:30, that she had been a few minutes late to the appointment and had found him dead, precisely as other witnesses had described. That instead of reporting the murder, she had hurried home to the Grange and dressed for dinner, her failure to report being due to a desire not to worry Sir Quentin or spoil Lady Eve's dinner party. Questioned in regard to her visit to the Hollow that night, Fazenda corroborated Sylvester Shaw's story in every particular. The coroner then shifted the trend of the inquiry back to the afternoon. "Do you know at what time Lady Eve Rotherdene left the Grange?" "I do not. I did not see Lady Eve from luncheon until just before dinner. I supposed she was taking an afternoon nap." "Did Lady Eve ever tell you, in confidence perhaps, that she was acquainted with the deceased?" "Lady Eve was not in the habit of making me her confidant, but if she had, I should not betray her confidence." The coroner exhibited signs of impatience. "Direct answers, if you please, Miss Lee. Did you know or come to suspect that Lady Eve Rotherdene was personally acquainted with the deceased?" Fazenda glanced around her with thoughtful calm. She did not appear to see Eve's strained face. Her eyes sought out and rested upon Sir Quentin. "I have no reason to suppose," she answered in clear, distinct tones, "that Lady Eve Rotherdene was personally acquainted with Mr. Raynor." The coroner raised his hand in a gesture of dismissal. Fazenda stood down. With firm step she returned to her seat beside Mr. Elphick. As she passed Eve, the latter attempted a little friendly smile. Again, Fazenda did not seem to see her. End of chapter 17.